Check, check. Hello. Alrighty. Let me see here. It appears we might be out of... No, we're not out of storage. Oh. No, we should have enough. We should be good. Alrighty. What's going on, guys? So I'm going to jump in here to the December Q&A. Quick comment, I know I did the November Q&A, but I can't find it. I don't know where it went. So I'm going to work on locating that, and I'll get that posted up here soon. I apologize. This past month, we've done 11 shows already, and we have 3 more before the end of the month here. So it's very, very hectic and busy right now. Next month and the month after will be a little bit easier. But without further ado, let's jump into these Q&A questions. I'm going to start here with Raphael. So let me pull this up. Raphael at we'll do 1. There we go. All right, Raphael, your question is, how do you post-process your basses in gain staging? So two different things here for the most part. My basses, I'm assuming that you mean like growl basses and stuff like that. So it depends. It's a case by case scenario, but a lot of the time what it's going to look like is it's OTT and distortion, which let me show you exactly how I do it. So if I'm going to pull open, let's just do Serum for the sake of example. Everybody has Serum. Here we go. So let me get 2 like sinoid based wavetables here, and maybe one like lesser, something like this. Something like this right here. And let me go ahead. Let's add a little bit of automation here. So first thing, like I said, distortion, like this. So I'm also usually going to turn on the sub oscillator here to get that extra sinoid tone. And then beyond that, let's try some OTT here. Sounds solid, nice and gritty. And then beyond that, it just depends on what kind of sound I want to go for. Sound design, or post-processing rather, can really range in different ways depending on what I want this to sound like. For example, let me show you what I could do here if I were to make this a lot of a quicker... First things first, let's adjust this. So what I could do is I could use frequency shifter. I use that quite a bit. How you like kilohertz better than Ableton stock? Could maybe try. So frequency shifter works by shifting all the frequencies, and that tone that you hear is the sub frequency. So if I EQ that out, I'll get a little bit of a different result. Let's try moving the OTT over here. Could try like a vocoder. Let's loosen this up a little bit. Maybe try and make less shitty. It's one of my Ableton racks. And then a little bit of stereo on here. So I'll go back into Serum effects. So yeah, just like playing around like that. This is usually a lot of the time what my post-processing chain looks like, at the very least with the OTT and the distortion, and then these two things are kind of, case-by-case use scenario. As for gain staging, to be honest with you, I'm not going to be able to answer your question satisfactorily because I don't really pay much attention to gain staging. What I do is I clip my sounds, and I clip them into the master. So you see here I have a hard clipper. So what I do is I clip my sounds really hard. As you can see, it's going into the red here, which means it's moving up the signal chain into my, well, it's not in the submaster. Now it's in the submaster. So it's going into the submaster channel right here where it's now being clipped by this G clip. So I don't really use gain staging, rather. I make everything very, very loud and mix all my sounds by ear. And then after that, I start to tame things down on the master channel. That's how I go about doing my mixes. So I can't really give you a proper gain staging tutorial because it's not a practice that I prefer to use. All right. Thank you for asking your question. Let us move on. We'll go to Caleb here. Caleb here at 6 minutes. All right, Caleb, your question is, I'd love to see how you made the distorted bass in the first couple measures and ground shakes drop. Yeah, no problem. So there's a very, very simple process that goes into this. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to get a sine wave. It doesn't matter what you want to use to generate your sine wave. We'll do a serum sine wave like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get another harmonic as well. So I'm basically going to generate a sub. If you're not familiar with sub generation, this is going to be it. Oops. Okay, so now we got our sub. Beyond this, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to group this and I'm going to get a white noise. And I know I could probably just use the white noise oscillator here, but I like to keep it separate so I have a bit more control. I want to be able to EQ it and stuff. So instead of that, I'm going to use operator. Let's remove that filter. Oops, that's not what I want. Adjust that envelope. Turn that white noise down. And I'm going to get serum effects here and I'm going to turn on distortion. We'll try Stomp Box. So that's kind of the gist of how that sound is made on a very, very basic sense. It's a little bit more involved if you want to get like the full sound. So what was unique about Ground Shake Sub is that we didn't use serum to make a sub. We used my maximal sub sample, so it looks like this. Let me grab, yeah, we'll use simpler. Now we'll use sampler. Sampler, there we go. Fuck. Oh, wait a minute. There we go. Maximal. Get rid of this guy real quick and turn this off. So as you can hear, this guy already has some white noise baked onto him. So this is pretty much the product of doing these two things and then really finessing it. Oh, shit. That's not... like that. To... that sound right there. That's what you want. To show you how I did that, I'm not going to go super into it because I can kind of let you reverse engineer it yourself. But on my Patreon, there's a maximal sub rack, an actual rack. And it is, because I don't even use it, I just use the samples anymore. Right here. So basically it is an operator patch. And let's see what all we have on here. I made this more than a year ago. This is a while. So it's distorting, running it into a saturator. We got a vocoder here set to modulator. We got some kick tight going on. Just all these tools here that are giving you very, very specific tone. This extra clean knob right here is going to toggle some extra stuff going on in here. It turns down the volume a little bit and then feeds it into a kick tight. And then the tone is going to adjust how much white noise there is, so on and so forth. So this is what I use. This is the tool that I use to make my subs. And then I resample them, and I mostly just use these two, which is Maximal Sub 808 mod and Extra Clean. And the sub that you hear in Ground Shake is Extra Clean. And once again, like I showed you, is distorting the sub against the white noise, which this right here is white noise. So this is operator, which the reason I didn't demonstrate an operator is because it's a little bit more intimidating to use. But this is the sub that I have, and then this is the white noise that's layered on top. As you can see here, we are using this, I don't even know what you fucking call this, like oscillator setup. Hang on one second. This is the oscillator setup, whereas this, I believe, uses like a frequency modulation setup. So this is the setup for operator, and this rack is on my Patreon if you want to grab it and reverse engineer it or anything. But yeah, that's how I made that sound. Hopefully that helps you out. All right, let's move on to Miles. Miles will be at 11:45. All right, Miles. Hey, Coach, just joined up, and overall I want to ask if you could do a full-length vid on making tear out. I'm just getting into the genre, and I can make the gunshot basses, drums, and sub, but my drops feel really basic and empty. I'm not quite sure what I'm missing. Thank you for signing up, and I can definitely do that now. I can't promise you exactly when. Certainly won't be this month, as I leave tomorrow for 5 tour dates in a row, and January and February I'm still on tour. So the reason I probably won't be making any tear out then is because I have most of the dubstep that I'm going to release for my project over the next like 8 or 9 months already made. So I might work on something, but I don't know quite when. My guess is it would be around like February or March. So if you hang out around here, I'm sure I'll get to it at some point, but yes, I would definitely like to be able to provide that for you. Separate from that, here's your Q&A questions. Could you cover how I made the lead for my All Hype remix? It's so aggressive but clean. Yeah, I don't even remember how I did that. Let me open that project while I'm waiting for, let's see, All Hype. It used to be called All Night. There we go. Okay. I'll open that up and I'll see. Because I was thinking about that too. I was like, damn, that lead goes hard. I don't remember how I made it. Drop rhythms are something I truly struggle with. How do you come up with interesting rhythms that keep a listener engaged? So this is something that takes a little bit of practice. I'm going to answer this first. But you almost want to think about your rhythms. So think of them like a really, really cool, complex drum pattern, right? Like everybody just does like dun, 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 or like dun, 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 dun. See how you can like create derivatives that combine those two. So maybe it's like dun, 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 you know, just like things like that, where it's like very repetitive, but it switches up very, very often. Do that first and then get your sound design or your melody to fit with that pattern. So just sit there, you could drum on your desk and just like come up with cool patterns that are derivatives of like the very basic, either like quarter notes, half notes, or whole notes. So you're either doing like one, or I don't know if you can hear that or not, I hope you can, or like, so just come up with like, you know, another way you could do it is you could just make a MIDI clip with like a rim shot and have all those patterns and then basically cut it up and randomly paste it around. And that'll help you get like a cool complex rhythm. And you can kind of use your ear to refine it from there, stuff like that. That's how I usually do it in my head. I don't do those processes like out loud because I don't need to anymore. But that's how you can do it. That's how I used to do it. So let me try to find this lead. I think it'd be right here. I believe, I was pretty sure it was massive. Okay, so this is a rack that I made a while ago. I was very obsessed with the Slander and Murata song. I don't remember what it's called, but it had that really, really crazy lead. And I reconstructed it using Massive, and it looks like this is a super basic patch. But long story short, I kind of use this rack all the time now. And I've learned to manipulate it in different ways. So there's this pitch knob right here. By the way, this rack is on the Patreon, so you can download it. This pitch knob right here affects the cutoff of the scream filter, which looks like this. And then there's a whole bunch of post-processing. So it looks like I created the flutter by basically using utility. And then I fed it into some dispersing using a fuck ton of EQ3s. I guess I use shifter to shift the tone. That's interesting. I don't usually do that. I usually do that by setting another macro on the scream filter. Fuck, I was really on one this day. And then beyond that, some stereo expanding and smooth. Fuck, I've been out of the studio for like a couple weeks now, and I'm losing all my brain cells. Mid-side separator to really balance whether the mid or the side is more prominent. In this case, the sides were too prominent, so I boosted the mid gain. And then just a little bit of EQ fixing at the end. I remember this sound was very, very high. High frequency dominant, so I put a little bit of a shelf right here and boosted. This is the fundamental frequency right there. So that's what's going on with it. You don't really need to worry about all this post-processing. That's very finesse, but just generating the sound is all. This massive patch that looks like this, it's feeding into a Camel Crusher set to British Clean. And that's going into, I don't even have the vocoder on this time. That's about it. So as you can see, another thing here is that this pitch is just modulating a little bit to kind of create that wow, 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 wow sound. So hopefully that gives you some insight. I'm glad you asked that, because I've also been meaning to revisit how I made this sound. A lot more common than you'd think. I make sounds just based off of like certain like patches that I've already made in the past, and then I'm like, damn, that goes really hard, but I don't exactly remember how I made it. So it's cool to like revisit shit like this sometime. I'm probably going to employ this sound in another track that I do soon, because I really like it. So, but yeah, hopefully that helps answer your question. I'll get to making a tear out tutorial over the next couple months for you. All right, we'll move on here to Dream Rider, my brother. Let's see what's good. 1745. All right. Hey, Crank Up, you're doing good. You as well, my man. I don't want to stay in my box of making some basic sounds that are the core of my sound, followed by filling the rest of the sound with samples. Got the basics of my sound design in dubstep and rhythm now, but I want to advance that into a higher standard. What should I do to push myself further down that path? Any plugins I could get, racks? Really good question here. So the simple answer, honestly, in my opinion, at least historically for me, whenever I get to a place where, you know, I kind of feel stuck with sound design, or I just want to keep pushing myself, is just get something new. Get a new plugin that you're not as familiar with, and challenge yourself. Take like a day and just really dig into it. You know, you could go as advanced as like a Harmor or something like that, a Citrix, or you could get something that's just a little bit more of the same but different. For example, like if you're a Serum guy, you could switch to Vital, Phase Plant, whatever. And just, you know, experiment with it. And, you know, what's going to happen is you're going to employ your own techniques into that sound, but you're going to discover other techniques along the way because it's just a different system than you're used to. This will help you get fresh, new, creative sounds, as well as just kind of expand your left brain thinking of what goes into sound design, because it's not going to be procedural for you. You're really going to have to think about what's going into it. So in the past, whenever I've switched up my synthesis methods, literally by switching the synth, it always comes with the best results. Most recently, when I started using Vital, this was just a couple months ago, I've been really, really, really happy with not only the quality of that synth, but how I have been able to just kind of grow a little bit more as a sound designer, just by using that new tool and taking advantage of the new systems it has to offer. So it's a little bit of a basic answer, but I hope it gives you some insight as to why I think it's such a universally accepted practice. So Great question. Very, very good question. Let's move on here to Bulat. We'll put you at 20. All right. Hey, Coach, some questions. I want to hear your opinion. How often and in what cases do you use a dynamic equalizer? Does it make sense in EDM music? It absolutely can. At the end of the day, all of these dynamic equalizers, multiband compressors, regular compressors, EQ, just regular equalizers, they're all different tools to achieve similar results. It just comes down to what your purpose is. A dynamic equalizer is, a little bit more specific for equalizing than a traditional equalizer, and the way that it does that is it only reduces the frequency that you're trying to, or add to the frequency, but in most cases reduce. It only reduces the frequency after it's a certain level of loudness, and this just gives you a little bit more control. It's a little bit more of an advanced control. It absolutely has its place. Whether you choose to use it or not is very specific to how you go about creating your sounds and just what your track needs in order to excel. I don't use dynamic equalizers very often. I'm sure I could probably use them more than I do. But sometimes I just don't necessarily feel that they're needed. When they are needed, I absolutely do use them. So it does have a place, but I wouldn't say you need to be using a dynamic equalizer all the time, the same way that you would be using just a regular EQ to clean up some of the rough edges of your sound and create a more balanced signal. Hopefully that answers your question. Very good question. All right, let's move on to River. Put you at 21. 55. All right, River. Coach, my man, I owe my entire fucking inspiration and soul to you for this course. Oh, thank you, man. I'm very glad you've been getting some good use out of it. Good. Very, very good. Your stuff is already better. That's what I like to hear, man. I like to provide you a practical approach. I'm going to be refining it next year as early as I can, so hopefully you stick around and you can learn a little bit more as well. So, good. All this is great stuff to hear. Can you please make the full-length workshop for D&B? I know you already have some resources like the Steve one, your style, my latest drum and bass remix blended with my way of explaining things would be very, very beneficial. I will absolutely get on that. So I was just answering Miles a couple questions ago who asked me to make a tear out, and I will absolutely get to that. It might take me a little bit because I got to finish my tour. My tour finishes in February, and I just have a pretty limited amount of time in the studio outside of just working on like my like fucking TikTok remixes that have been going nuts lately. So I kind of have to dedicate a lot of my production to that. If there is one that's applicable that's drum and bass, I'll make sure to get it recorded so that you have a new resource, to be able to tap into. But aside from that, thank you again for the kind words. It really, really makes me happy to see anecdotal evidence that it's helping people like you, because that's why I want to put this together. I'm always very intimidated by courses that are super technical and just don't really have that human factor in them, and I want to try to provide you guys with a practical approach to getting really, really good results, because it's with all the resources at our fingertips today, you don't need to be a crazy engineer to be able to get insane sounding electronic tracks. So very glad that this is working for you. I appreciate it more than I can verbalize. So thank you for being here, man. All right, we're going to move on here to Thorin Yezi. Excuse me. All right. Hey, Coach. Wondering if you could go over the drop leads, layer, sound design, and the Lollipop remix. Yeah, absolutely. Trying to make and practice leads of a similar style, but can't quite get it right. Yep, let me get that guy open for you. Should load fairly quickly. And I'm going to get this project up. I'm just super behind. I apologize because my tour's just been beating the shit out of me lately. We've only been home for about 8 or 9 days this whole month. So let's get this guy loaded up. As for the leads and layers, I can tell you off the bat what we're going to see here. I have some mid basses that I use in all my melodic tracks. We're going to see those right away. The other layers are going to be super saw waves, super saw chords rather. And then the synth lead, I believe, is just one really big, like, I think it's just a big super saw. I was very, like, kind of generic on this one, but let's see. So I believe this is the group. So this is the lead group, and let me see what I got here. It's Vital for the synth, and what I did, I bought this. It's Lander FX. It was like $10 on Black Friday, and I'm like, fuck it. If I can like get something cool out of this, that's fine. So I bought it. Just adjust the tone a little bit. Doesn't really do anything crazy. This is where a lot of the sauce is right here. So, oops. Let me show you the patch first things first. It's just literally a random wavetable. I set the vocode on it, and then, I don't know, just adjusted it until I thought it sounded good. So it's all very random. I wasn't really, I was kind of just experimenting when I made the sound. But this is the meat and potatoes right here, this Serum FX. It's set to... excuse me. It's not using the dimension section. It's using the hyper section. Turn the rate and the detune very, very high up and the unison up. Put the mix at about 50%. This gives you that really crisp, clean super saw sound. Now pairing that with this Valhalla Room just gives you that big, spacey, like almost air horny sounding lead. So beyond that, we have a couple of layers here, and I'll show you what they look like. This is literally just a bit of a super saw right here, detuned saw, and it's turned down 1 octave, and then the volume is cut down quite a bit. That's to just give a little bit of extra presence as a nice layer. Lastly, we have just a sine wave in here. That's to just thicken up the tone of the lead, and it just helps it sit into the mix a little bit better. So beyond that, we have the little beeps. I put a hard stereo on them and widened it a lot so that it's not the focal point. What's this guy? He's a little bit later. This is the womp womp sound. Just something to drive the rhythm forward a little bit. It sounds a lot empty without it. With it. So all that I did here for this was I took a sample and I frequency shifted it to kind of be in key, and that was really it, I believe. I don't think I did any more like sound design for that. Here's the chords. So it's going to be 2 things. One is my future bass, or my future saws, or future chords, whatever the fuck rack. It's on the Patreon. You could find it. And these are both playing the same exact chord MIDI. This is Vital, and it's set to 2 regular saws. And I have them feeding into a G clip, and they're getting clipped really hard. And then they're being sent into an EQ8 where I take out the low end so it doesn't sound really low and rumbly. Here's what it sounds like without. Looks like it didn't actually need all that much cleaning, but it's best to be safe than sorry. Serum FX here is to provide a little tiny bit of detune with the hyper node. And then what's really doing a lot of the smoothing of this sound, because it was clipped really hard, are all these EQ3s set to do a little bit of a dispersing job here. So you can see how much it cleans that sound up. It's quite impressive. So that's what's going on in the chords. And then, like I told you before, all my basses, these are my mid basses right here. And I use these in just about every melodic track I do. They're in I'm Good, they're in Thriller, they're in a lot of my tracks I've been using these. This is like a modded version of the layers that I used in my Miss the Rage remix. So I just kind of carry them over to new tracks and use them and adjust them and tweak them as necessary to get them to fit, to sound like really thick and bassy. But that's all that there is, really. It's a very, very basic remix. I just wanted something kind of regular RL Grime E sounding, but still cranked at E sounding and hype to play in my sets. So yeah, that's all that there is there. Very, very good question. Glad that you asked it. Thank you. All right, let's move on to Mason. All right, Mason, let's see what's good. 2940. All right, Mason. What's up? I'm just a little confused on clipping as a whole. Should I be clipping my whole track? Is it just the drums? What should I be doing with it? Every time I make a track in FL, it is substantially surpassing the 0 dB mark, which I know is bad, but should I just be hard clipping the master at 0, or should I quiet or mix quieter and then add gain and clip at the end? I don't know if this makes sense, but thank you for your time. So this is a really good question, and this is how I do it. So I can kind of demonstrate to you here in this track that I already have pulled up. So I want you to pay attention. I'm going to play all these sounds in tandem real quick. As you can see, my sounds group is soloed. I know you're an FL guy, but it's all the same. Pretend this is your sounds bus. So as you can see right here, the signal is clipping hard as fuck. I don't know why it's stalling right there. Ignore that. I have no idea why that's happening. My apologies. But anyways, as you can see, everything's going all the way up past 0 decibels on this group channel. That means multiple individual channels are also doing the same. Like let's see. Like these guys, I guess is more of a group, but yeah, there's individual sounds clipping all over the place, and they're just feeding up into the next chain. Now here's how clipping works, right? So unless you actually put a clipper on, it's just moving up in the signal chain. It can only move up so far before it gets to its final destination, which is your physical output, meaning like your audio interface or whatever sound card you're using. That is the physical output. Now the sound cannot surpass 0, so that sound card or driver or interface or whatever is going to actually clip your sound. That being said, it's not always going to be expressed. So that's why when we're working in DAWs, we get indicators like this, that it's going up through the meter, so that we know that it is occurring, even though like we might not be able to tell consciously, but it is going to be clipping. If it's going up through that meter, it's clipping. That's why we use things like this is my clipper of choice. It's OVC 128. You could swap it with whatever clipper you want. But basically, on my master, I have this clipper. Now, your question was, should I be mixing quieter? I don't think so. The way that I do it is I mix all my shit really, really loud, and then at the end, I go into my master and then I turn things down. It's a lot easier to turn things down. When you mix loud and things are clipping, say for example like a kick drum. I pull in this kick drum right here. Let's do... Can't type. I put this kick drum in right here. I play it. It's not clipping. As you can see, it's going right up to that 0 line right there. Let me make it a little bit louder. I'm gonna bring in a utility and put some gain on it. I can hear that it's clipping. I don't even need to see this meter. I can hear that it's clipping. You hear that distortion? That's how I know it is clipping very aggressively and it's distorting, and it's a little bit overcooked. When you clip your sounds, you get them as loud as you possibly can, and then you can use your ears to tell you if it sounds good or not. So like for example, right here, all these sounds, clipping to absolute shit, but it still sounds good. That's what's important. That's why I recommend doing that. You can use your ears. You learn to use your ears and trust your ears. You can always turn things down. That's why it's called a mix down, not a mix up. That's why I don't like mixing quietly. I mix very loud and I clip things. And then afterwards, while I have my clipper on right here, I turn down the volume and get things to sit in the mix the right way. That's the way that I advocate for it. Hopefully that answers your question and gives you a little bit of insight. So let me show you specific instances of where I clip. I have a clipper on my master. I don't use a limiter. I use a clipper. I don't clip my drums. I don't have a clipper on my drum group. I don't have a clipper on any of my individual drums. It's just not there. Case by case, there might be an instance where I do, but that's more of a sound design approach rather than a mixing approach, okay? On my sounds themselves, no clipper. This group right here, a little bit of a different scenario. This is my basses group. I use a clipper and I turn down, oh, it looks like, okay, never mind. Sometimes I turn down the dry wet percentage, but in this case, I just use something afterwards that, another tool that makes it clip again. So even though without it, it's pretty much not clipping. I don't know why there's a little bit of a poke there. Ignore that. There's obviously something glitching here. But when I have this tool on, it goes back to clipping again. Anyways, that's more of a sound design thing, but the real place where I'm using a clipper is on my master, and that's for the reasons that I told you before. It's so that I can hear what's going on. I strongly recommend using a clipper in FL because depending on whether you're using ACO for all or whatever your sound card is or whatever situation you may have, it might not give you an adequate representation of what's actually happening with the sound. So easy fix is find a cool clipper. I can recommend OVC 128. It's a pay for, but that's what I use. Free options are G-Clip and Clip Shifter, depending on which, whether you're on PC or Mac, you can use either or both of those. And that's pretty much it. I hope that answers your question. It's a very, very good one. And if you aren't completely clear, if you just stick around here long enough, you'll get a very, very good grasp of when at least I use clipping or not. And I have a pretty straightforward method for what goes into that. So very good question. All right, let's move on here to Freddie. Freddie, we got you at 35.45. Freedy. All right, Fred. Howdy, partner. One of my sons. How I go about starting original ideas. You're trying to get more into OG music, find yourself wasting a lot of time doing random shit and making little progress. Fuck. You start with drop or lay out the whole structure, go in intro and just one off. Yeah, I can't read. You know what I'm saying. Or just go off of one sample or idea. Okay. So, very good question. The easiest way historically for me to write is starting with the intro and then just running with it. That usually results in the best product because what you're able to do is build off of all the previous sections, and it works linearly, like a timeline. All your ideas flow from one to the next, and you're able to draw inspiration on what you just wrote to feed into the next segment. That being said, life is not always so practical. There's going to be times where you just have like a drop inspiration and you write a drop and then you need to make an intro to fit that. That becomes a little bit more difficult. And that, for me, that just took a shit ton of practice to make a good intro to fit a drop. Just took a lot of practice and effort in honing my skills as a songwriter. So what you're asking about in particular is songwriting ability. And the best way to get good at that is to just practice. Tools that you can use in order to assist your process. If you have acapellas, acquire a fuck ton of those. Find an acapella that fits the vibe of the track that you want to make. Put it in there, and then start producing around it. That gives you a nice center point to try to work around. If you're not going to have vocals on the track, cut a sample, something like that, and try working around the sample and just sprinkle little bits and pieces around and try to create, in the same way that a vocal is going to be the focal point of your entire song, do the same thing just by using like a vocal chop or a sample or a synth riff or whatever it may be, something to sort of emulate what the vocal does, and then write around that. That gives you your centerpiece. Some little tips and tricks that I can tell you. Use the same ideas over and over again. You write a really good melody, don't only use that melody in your drop. Sprinkle bits and pieces in your intro. Maybe slight derivatives in your intro. Make it a lot quieter, make it different sound, slightly different execution, etc. But use the same pieces over and over again. You write a really good chord progression in the intro. No need to switch it up entirely for the drop. Use a derivative, use the same exact one, chop it up a little bit, make it halftime, whatever you need to do, but keep the same ideas in place. All these things are going to not only assist you in your writing process, but create a better product. The more the idea is reciprocated over the course of the song, usually the better the song is. The textbook 101 example I have for that is there's two songs that I can think of. This is the number one without question. As far as dance music is concerned, this might be the best written dance music record I've ever heard in my life. I'm not saying it's the best, but the best written. Like I Do, by David Guetta, Martin Garrix, and Brooks. Listen to this. You have that chord progression. It's playing like an E piano. You have that vocal. It's singing a very specific melody. What happens? We keep moving forward. A little bit of an addition to the production going on here with some added drums. Let's fast forward. We get a cool little, slightly different chord progression going on here for the build up, and that feeds directly into the drop. And that drop right there is playing the exact same melody that the vocal was, just with a new and different sound. The chords are the exact same, but it brings a lot more intensity. It's just hammering that melody into your head, but it's a really fucking good melody, so it's worth it. It's good. But it's like, you know, this had to have been the easiest fucking song of all time to write, but it's such a good product, and the proof is in the fucking pudding. 500 million goddamn streams, and this is literally a slap house record. It's fucking ignorant, you know? So that's what I'm trying to relay, is that you don't have to be Beethoven here. Focus on executing the core idea of your song, and then, you know, just flesh that idea out with different means of production, and then you're going to have an absolutely fantastic original record. Simpler is truly better. Not always, you know, I'm not saying that every single track you have to write is going to be like this, but, you know, a lot of the time, if you're trying to make a really good iconic record, simpler it is, the better it's going to be. All right, very good question. Hopefully that gives you some insight, brother. We'll move on to Meyer. All right, Meyer. Put you at 4140. Okay. Hey, Coach, not sure what order you do the videos and whether you listen to demos first or respond. I'm doing this first this time. My demo I'm sending this month is I really want to try to release officially, and Monstercat has always been the dream label. It's how I discovered you years ago. Make me happiest person in the world. Since that demo isn't a remix, I'm going to try to send it to them. Do you think it's something they'd take, and do you have any tips for sending big labels like them? I know you say to build a portfolio and collab with bigger artists to kind of Trojan horse my way in, but I don't have any opportunities like that right now. Yeah, so here's kind of the reality of the situation. I'll give it to you straight, because if I sugarcoat it, it's just not going to help you at all. I don't know whether Monstercat will take your record or not. I can't attest to that. What I can say is that they're very picky. Monstercat is very particular about who they work with and who they don't, and I could tell you what they look for. Them in particular, like many other labels, they are going to look at the artist profile that they're signing the record of. Not just the song, but they're going to look at the artist profile. They want to put on artists that they think have what it takes to go to the next level. So, you know, that requires having like I told you right here, a nice portfolio in place, you know, some other music, maybe if it's not original, then remixes, or just having some sort of identity. It's highly unlikely that they would ever sign a track from an artist that has no music out prior, unless they have a relationship with that person. Say it's like a person that is just familiar with people that work at the label, or for example, say a producer made a side project, and this is like the first song of their side project. It's going to go on Monstercat. They would sign it because they're familiar with that person's work in the past, and therefore how they build projects, etc. Just, you know, a new producer submitting a song that may or may not have an active portfolio, it might not be the most realistic case. So my tip would be this: if you're trying to send it directly to them, I wish you the best of luck. Things can happen, of course. But that being said, it's more than likely that, you know, they're receiving, I talked to John Winter the other day, and they receive so many fucking demos every single day, like in the thousands. So they can't even, like, it's not possible for them to listen to them all. They don't have the staffing. There's like maybe 50 people that work at Monstercat, if I'm estimating correctly. So, you know, what I would say to do, to be honest with you, is if you don't hear back, your best bet is you want to create these opportunities. They're not going to come to you. The best way that you could do that is just by honing your craft, making the best music that you can, and putting it out into the world, and then opportunities like that will start to come. They don't come from just nothing, though. So it's like you start, working on social media, you post clips, you post tracks on SoundCloud, you post remixes on SoundCloud, you reach out to other artists in the same lane as you that are around the same size as you. You collaborate, you build your repertoire, and you start to shoehorn your way into the actual scene, whether that's from the very, very low end or the high end or whatever. You get into the scene. When you do that, you start to really make a name for yourself, and off of that, that's when you're going to start to get opportunities like signing to Monstercat and other labels. It's very, very, very difficult for labels to sign artists that they're not familiar with, just because there's a lot of responsibility that goes into releasing a track as well, and they don't know who they're dealing with. They like to make sure they're dealing with professional individuals. So, it's a tough game, and I'm not going to lie about that, but it's not impossible. But what I'm telling you is definitely the way to do it. It's unlikely to happen otherwise, but it's very possible. What you can do is just hone your craft, get in with other people. It will take time, but crazy things will happen. The more you get in, the things will start to happen every day. Like if I'm giving you an example from back when I was a young producer, I remember I was just releasing remixes on SoundCloud, and Marshmello hit me up just out of the blue. He was like, "Hey, I fuck with your stuff." What a massive in that was, that does happen. Like, it's going to happen, but it's not going to happen. It would have never happened if I wouldn't have posted my remixes on SoundCloud, right? Stuff like that. A more recent one, Mala just hit me up the other day. I've never spoken to him in my life. He was like, "Hey, I like your Lil Yachty remix. Can you send it to me?" I was like, "Absolutely, brother. Here you go." New contact made, It's just like things like that when you're working on the business of the game. That's how things happen, so... But hopefully that answers your question and gives you a little bit more insight. I will listen to your demo and provide any tips that I can. But as far as the business side of things go, that's the reality of it. And I'd rather give it to you straight than sugarcoat it and allow you to be disappointed. So hearing it might not be the most pleasant thing, but you could still get it and you can make it happen. You just got to know what goes into it. And it's better to steer you that way than to steer you in the wrong way and, leave you stranded. That's not my goal. I want to see you get that sign. So, all right, I'm going to tackle, let's see here. We'll do Raphael real quick. $47.30. All right, Raphael. So I have a video on my Patreon about this in particular. It's a little bit old. You probably have to dig back, a couple dozen videos. I'm not sure if you're talking about like dubstep basses or synth basses. If we're talking about dubstep basses, then it really depends. But basically, to be honest with you, I'm taking a bunch of different sounds and I'm putting them on top of each other, and I'm picking little bits and pieces that I like. So, for example, let's say I'm gonna take like an ivory bass like this. Let's go one shot, like that sound, and then let me take another sample. Let's go one of mine. Let's do here, monthly sample packs. Let's do. So like this, I'm going to get these two, and I'm going to layer these two together. Off the bat, they already sound okay. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make sure that I get the low end out of this one. I'm going to do the same over here, get the low end out of this guy. And then let's try this. Let's even throw one more into the mix. Let's see if we can. Same exact thing. Cut out the low end here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick certain ones to have more priority than others. I want this guy dialed into the background, so I'm going to turn down his volume and put a hard stereo on him. Let's fade him out a bit too. Let's go like this. Secondly, I'm going to add in my sub now. Let's go sub, we'll do, and I'm going to make sure that my sub is tuned to what the other sounds are playing. It just sounds like these are playing a D note, so I'm going to tune it to a D note. And that's pretty much it. Aside from that, I'm doing gentle EQ, so I'll see if anything has an excessive peak. This guy looks like he has a little bit too much high end, so I'm going to reduce that. And then this guy, a little bit of a peak right here. We'll cut this down. And that's about it. New sound. So 1, 2, 3. That's it. That's all that goes into it. Nice and easy. Just a couple random samples and we got a brand new sound. All right, I'm going to end this video and I'm going to start up a new one tomorrow. There's going to be a part 1 and 2 of this because I got an obligation to attend to, but I want to knock some of these out. So I will get these finished up. See you guys tomorrow.